Are you aware of what the true meaning of wealth is?
I'm not sure.
The most valuable asset a human being has is time. Therefore, wealth is a measurement of time and not necessarily money.
So the question is, how do we use money to increase the value of our time?
Well, when you go to a job, you are trading your time at a certain rate. Your time is returned to you in the form of fiat currency.
What is fiat currency?
A fiat currency is a currency that is not backed by anything tangible. The purchasing power of a fiat currency depends on the amount of currency that is borrowed into existence relative to the amount of goods and services that are available.
So the time you trade at a job could have more or less purchasing power one year than it had in the last?
Yes, it can. In fact, since our currency is borrowed into existence uncontrolled, the purchasing power of the currency that we received at our job in exchange for our time has decreased. Therefore, the level of our wealth has also decreased for the last 100 years.
What do you mean borrowed into existence?
The only way for money to exist is through borrowing. When you sign an application for a car or a house, the money you received did not exist until you signed the application. This money is then added to the supply of currency that is available to purchase goods and services.
So, the entire supply of money in existence is debt that can grow uncontrollably, and that money has to be accounted for via the national debt?
That is basically correct. But there's a kicker.
A kicker?
Yes, not only is all money created as debt, but it is loaned out at interest.
If all money is debt, then if we paid off the national debt, there would be no money?
Correct.
Well, if all money is debt, loaned at interest, and the money would disappear if we paid off the debt, where does the interest come from?
Since it is impossible to pay the interest with debt, the interest has to also be borrowed, and then added to the principal loan amount, then loaned back out at interest.
You have got to be kidding. If the interest also has to be borrowed, then there will always be more debt than money to pay it back.
Correct. Perpetual slavery and devaluation of the value of our time and therefore our lives is the result.
So it is a mathematical certainty that the money supply has to grow until it reaches an exponential rate?
As long as the currency isn't backed by anything tangible that is limited in supply and grows in step with population growth, then yes, it will reach an exponential rate of growth.
So the supply of money will dramatically outgrow the supply of goods and services, causing the price of goods and services to also grow out of control?
You got it, baby.
So if the purchasing power of the time we trade at our job becomes worth less and less, then sooner or later our time will become worthless. How are we to survive?
We can survive and even thrive on one basic concept: increasing the purchasing power of our time.
How can we possibly increase the purchasing power of our time?
Well, it's simple. Remember the currency we received in exchange for the time we traded at our job?
Well, of course.
We can take that currency and transfer it into an asset that has lost much of its purchasing power but is currently regaining that purchasing power over other assets.
I'm listening.
First, consider all of the things you will use and would like to own during your life. Food, vehicles, a home, real money, etc., and then ask yourself which of these things is currently the cheapest on a relative basis.
In other words, which of these things has lost more purchasing power over time but is currently gaining purchasing power relative to the other items?
You got it.
You mentioned real money. What did you mean by real money?
The main difference between real money and currency is that money retains its purchasing power over time.
You must be talking about gold and silver.
Bingo.
So from the list of items we built, we can see that gold and silver have been beaten down and left for dead for decades as far as purchasing power, but have recovered nicely over the last 10 years. What about real estate? I heard real estate is the best way for building wealth.
Normally I would agree with you. Real estate has created more millionaires than any other asset on earth. But in the last decade, money creation became so cheap that everybody with a pulse could create demand for real estate. This caused the purchasing power of real estate to rise dramatically. As the market ran out of suckers to sign the bottom line, the real estate market reached a peak somewhere around 2006.
I remember seeing a median house where I live reach a price of $450,000. That same house today sells for only $200,000. A loss of 55%.
Yes, and the price of silver averaged about $12.50 in 2006.
I believe so.
So if the price of silver had stayed at $12.50 to this day, its purchasing power over real estate would have risen by 100%, since the price of that median home was cut in half.
Bingo.
So my silver would buy twice as much real estate in 2011 than it would have in 2006. And also, if the dollar had maintained its relative strength over this time period, it also would have purchased twice as much real estate now than in 2006.
But we know that is not the case, don't we? We know that silver has risen in price as much as 240%. And the dollar has dropped by around 8% in the same time period.
Yes, which still puts the gain in purchasing power of the dollar over our median home at approximately 100%. But when we look at silver, we see that silver has gained an incredible 540% in purchasing power over the median home in our example.
I noticed you didn't mention gold.
Gold is also a good choice to increase the purchasing power of your time. However, between gold and silver, silver will usually be stronger than gold during a bull market. And both metals will destroy the performance of the dollar.
So our silver buys more than 5 times more real estate today than it did back in 2006. An investment of 10% on our median home in 2006 would be $35,000. When divided by $12.50, the average price of silver is 3,600 ounces of silver.
You're giving me shivers down my spine.
And that 3,600 ounces of silver is worth about $108,000 today.
Wow. So that means that for the same investment in 2006, which only gave us a 10% down payment, now allows us to put a 50% down on that same house.
Now I'm the one with the shivers.
Just think, when this trend continues, you will have enough purchasing power in your silver to purchase the entire home in our example.
I think I just spotted.
So in our example, this is an excellent way to trade the currency you receive in exchange for your precious time and cause it to gain the most purchasing power over other assets while protecting the value of your time and therefore increasing your wealth.
I think I love you.
And let me say this, as long as the supply of our money is controlled by a private bank owned by foreign interests, we the people will never be free. And it matters not who makes our laws, including our politicians. The Federal Reserve Act and the Federal Income Tax Act must be repealed. Search YouTube for an animated video titled The American Dream. It will be the most important 30 minutes you will spend all year. Peace out.